lot of people are excited about podcasting. How do you grow your podcast audience? Disclaimer here, I am not an expert on SEO. I'm not an expert on all of the technical background stuff that you can do to grow a podcast. What I do know is that I've been podcasting for over 10 years now. I started in 2007 with Live on Purpose Radio. That was before podcasting was even a thing. And I've learned a few things along the way about podcasting. Let's start with the psychological element here. Since I'm a psychologist, we're going to go there, okay? Why are you doing a podcast? Why? Who is it for? This is a really great question for you to consider. I know a lot of people who start a podcast for themselves. It's to position themselves as an expert or to market something that they're selling. Okay, well that's fine and that's legitimate, but just notice if that's your reason. If it's for you, it's going to be hard to sell it. And by sell it, I mean get other people engaged in it, making it relevant to them, if it's for you. So be clear about that. What if your podcast is for others? Okay, that's a little shift that's going to make it a little easier to sell. And people will want to sign up for it if it's really for them. Now, there's a few characteristics that I think make a podcast more compelling. And the first obvious component there is that it needs to be relevant. What is it that this podcast answers for the audience? Remember, it's for them. You make it relevant to them, and they're going to be much more likely to not only enjoy the podcast themselves, but to share it with other people with whom it would also be relevant. So that's one of those elements, relevance. The next thing that I want to talk about is consistency. There's a term in the industry called pod fading, and this happens a lot when a podcast starts and there's several episodes, and then where does it go? It disappears into the podosphere somewhere. Pod fading happens, I think, because people get excited about a new idea, or they heard that podcasting would be a great way to get their idea out, and they're not really committed to the process or the work that is required to do a consistent podcast over time. I shared with you that I've been doing mine for over 10 years. A weekly podcast. That requires some commitment. It has to show up on my calendar as something that is important to me. And I love doing it. I think if you don't love it, it's going to be really hard to sustain it. I've chosen to do my podcast in an interview format. So I interview authors and influencers and speakers about their inspiring content or their story. And that's easier for me to sustain because I'm not putting myself out there as the hero. I'm illuminating my guests as the hero. That makes it very relevant to them, and then they want to share it with other people. That's just a little clue as to one of the things you could do to grow your podcast audience. Consistency is probably one of the most important factors because that establishes in your audience's mind that you are here to serve them for the long run. And now, a little word about responsiveness. Responsiveness in my mind means that we tune into our audience. We get some feedback from them about what it is they want. Here's an example. My podcast, Live on Purpose Radio, used to be an hour long. It was an hour-long interview with a little break in the middle. And I think we had some breaks in the other parts of the show too. That came from my history in doing live radio. I did live talk radio for about a year and a half before I started my podcast. And that was the format we had on the live show. Well, when I went to podcasting, I just carried over the same format. I got some feedback from my listeners that they would really value having a podcast that was a little shorter in duration that they could listen to on their commute or during their workout. So I changed it to a half-hour format. You don't have to be stuck on whatever it is that you think is the best way to do this. Be open and responsive to the feedback that you get from your audience, and that will help to make the podcast more relevant and compelling to them. Why are all these things so important? When it comes right down to it, it's not you that's going to grow your audience. It's your audience. So the more you can tune into them in the ways that we've talked about here, the more likely it is that they are going to talk about or share your podcast with others. And that's how it grows. It's not you that's going to grow this audience. It's your audience that's going to grow your audience. That's just a few ideas. I know that there's a lot of other great ideas out there. If you have a podcast and you've got a good idea that you'd like to share, put it down there in the comments. Let's have a discussion.
I saw her standing in the street